Europe was once ruled by a man named King Charlemagne. King Charlemagne had a beautiful wife named Galen. And it was Galen's favorite time of year, a time when all of the knights would gather together for a tournament. And in this tournament, whoever won would be presented with a gift from the beautiful Queen Galen. Now, as the queen had hoped, her favorite knight won the tournament, the knight Garin. At the conclusion of the tournament, Garin walked up to receive his prize from the beautiful Queen Galen. And what the queen gave to him was an invitation to play a game of chess. Now, when the appointed day arrived when he was going to play the game of chess with the Queen Galen, when he arrived, there was no chessboard set up, and instead, the queen took this opportunity to express her feelings of love towards the knight Garin. Now, this put the knight Garin in a very awkward situation, as you might imagine, because in the first place, the queen was the wife to King Charlemagne, the most powerful man in all of Europe, the emperor of all of Europe, and he would not take kindly to the idea of her queen running off with a lowly knight. In the second place, he did not love the queen. Although she was very beautiful, his heart belonged to another. What was he to do? He thought the queen would understand, and as he began to explain to her with the words, "I'm sorry," he saw the queen stiffen and her countenance drop, and her lovely face turn to anger. And before he could even finish his sentence, the queen had stormed off to recount to the King Charlemagne how she had just been so insulted by a lowly knight who dared to deny her. Well, completely ignoring the fact that his wife, was interested in a lowly knight, he had to protect his queen's honor. So he challenged this lowly knight, Garin, to a duel. I'm guessing the king might not have been able to compete with this knight on a physical basis, so he challenged him to a game of chess. The stakes of the game were this. King Charlemagne said to Garin, "If you win the game, Garin, I will give you my kingdom, and I will give you my wife. If you lose the game, Garin, I will have your head." Now, the stakes of the game were very high, as you might have imagined, because Garin was in a lose-lose situation. If he won the game, he would win the hand of a woman he did not love and a kingdom he did not want. If he lost the game, he would lose his head, and he would be dead. What was Garin to do? But we'll find out the end of this story and how the game of chess turned out for this knight Garin in a different lesson. But for right now, we're going to learn how chess is played and how it's set up. Now, the game of chess is one of the oldest games that has been invented. And just as a little side note, the board that I have here is a folding board. And as you can see, it has a place here where I can put all my pieces of chess and store them like that. The folding chessboard was actually invented by a priest. And the odd thing, the reason he invented it is because chess was outlawed for priests. A priest could not play chess. Why? I don't know. But they invented a folding chessboard so that they could fold it into a smaller, compact area and sneak by the people who might get mad at a priest for playing chess. Anyways, here's how we set up a chessboard. When you set up the chessboard, if it's a folding chessboard like this, the fold is always going to go parallel to the side that's facing you. So, wrong, right. Now, another way to help you do this is this corner right here. If you can see, this is a dark square. To your left-hand side should be a dark square, and that's how you set up the board. Now, let's put the pieces on the board. I'm going to do it from the perspective of white. Usually, in almost every chessboard, there's dark and there's light pieces. And before the game begins, it's up to the two people that are playing to decide somehow who's going to be white and who's going to be dark, because white always goes first. So whoever has the white pieces is going to make the first move on the chessboard. So you decide beforehand by drawing lots, which is how it was traditionally done, which would involve something to the effect of flipping a coin, paper, rock, scissors, leg wrestle, whatever you want to do. Decide some way who's going to be the white piece. So I'm going to do this from the perspective of white. Let's start with the easy one. What we do is we set up the pawns like this first. And they go on the second row here. Where's all my pawns? Okay. So to point it out, the pawns are usually a piece that are rounded at the top. They might look a little bit different. In general, they'll be smaller than all the other pieces, and we call them a pawn. The next two pieces that I'm going to show you are the rooks, or the castles. They used to be called castles, now they're called a rook. I don't know why the name changed, but they did. So, the rooks go on the two ends, or the castles, if you want to call them that. The next two pieces that we'll do are the horses, or the knights. Some people like to call them a horse or a knight, but generally they look like a horse, so you can call it a horse, but they're called the knights. They go next to the castle or the rook. Right there. The next two pieces are the bishop. Okay. They usually look, sometimes they might look a lot like the queen, but there's always going to be two of them that are similar. And they will usually have, can you see how there's a little slit right here? Well, that slit is what identifies the bishop. The queen will not have a slit like that, but the bishop will. They're next in line. So notice how they're all in pairs except for the king and the queen. They are the pair. Now the king will always have somewhat of a cross or something that makes it a tall piece, and sometimes it'll be a cross, sometimes it'll be a crown looking thing, but there'll be some indication that it is the king by the top of it. It'll be kind of thinner, and it'll be taller than the queen, if you can see that there. Now, the rule is, a lot of people I've noticed, when they think they know how to play chess, or they do it, but they get mixed up on this part a lot. But the queen always, just remember this, the queen always goes on her color. So if you're white, the queen goes on the light colored square. The king will go on whatever square is left over. So just remember, the queen goes on her color. That's how you remember where she goes. So when you set up the opposite side, I'm going to set up the black pieces over here. It's actually going to be just the opposite when you're turning it around looking at it. Because right here, if I'm white, the queen's going to be on my left-hand side. Left, right. If we were to switch, the queen is now on my right-hand side, because the queen always goes on her color, and it's an exact mirror image of the other side. So let's set this piece up too, or this side up too. The pawns, and that's how you set up the chessboard. So remember, the key parts to setting up the chessboard correctly is that the dark square goes in the corner, your left-hand corner. The queen goes on her color. So no matter, it's an exact mirror image of what's on the other side. If I'm white, the queen is going to be on my left, and if I'm the dark colors, then the queen is going to be on my right. And this is how you set up the chessboard. Okay, so the main thing I wanted you to get out of this lesson today, the three things that I wanted you to learn, is how to set up the board, what the names of the pieces are, and how to place them on the board. Next week, we'll learn the next step of how the pieces move. The thing I invite you to do this week then is to make sure you have a chessboard and practice setting it up. Make sure that it's done correctly and that it looks like this, how I have it set up here. The pawns go in the front, the rooks, the knights, the bishops, and then the king and queen in the center. And the queen always goes on her color. That's how you set up a chessboard.